He's a master at mental projection. He rarely shows doubt in public. He commits to an outcome and assumes it boldly. But could he be even more effective if he allowed that outer strength to be balanced by more inner softness? All right, I'm excited about this video because I actually found out how Donald Trump prays. I see a lot of people critique Trump because they can't understand why Christians are so willing to get behind him. And if you're not paying attention to the nuance of how Trump operates in private, then yeah, it's easy to project onto him that he's not a very Christian guy. But what I found while researching this video was pretty much the opposite of that, and super interesting because Trump does pray. He is really connected to the Bible even. It's just not the biblical interpretation that most are expecting. See, it turns out that Trump's approach to prayer and manifestation was shaped early on in his life by one of America's most famous pastors, Norman Vincent Peale. Peale was the author of this book called The Power of Positive Thinking, and he preached for over 5 decades at this church called Marble Collegiate Church in Manhattan. The Trump family, attended these services almost weekly, and during those services, Peale was not some fire-and-brimstone preacher. He wasn't a biblical literalist. He preached a psychological and mystical interpretation of Scripture. His Sunday sermons were packed with optimism, bold belief, and practical techniques for using faith to win in everyday life. And as you can imagine, with that kind of mindset and message, the Trump family just loved him. And Trump has often said that Peale's voice and presence made him feel confident, like he could do anything. And in fact, Peale officiated Donald Trump's first wedding to Ivana in 1977, which is crazy. It just shows you how close they were. And so one of Peale's most famous lines in his book and his sermons is this: change your thoughts and you change your world. Peale taught that prayer wasn't begging, but believing, not pleading for outcomes, but mentally and emotionally assuming them. He spoke of the subconscious as fertile ground for faith, that what you impress upon the subconscious through repetition, feeling, and assumption will eventually show up in your reality. And if that sounds familiar, it should, because this is exactly how Donald Trump operates. Trump always speaks in absolutes. You've probably heard him say, "I'm a winner. No one builds better than me. I have the best words." To most people, this sounds like ego, and I can totally get that interpretation of his words. But when you understand Peale's teachings, you start to see it more as mental rehearsal. Trump isn't just making casual claims willy-nilly. He's actually imprinting a vision on reality. He's declaring it. He's living in it. And this is how Peale trained people to pray, by aligning thought with belief and belief with embodiment. So Trump, in many ways, is the most public example we have of how this technique can work when practiced with consistency and conviction. Trump doesn't just visualize what he wants, he speaks it out loud. He floats bold ideas and lets the world energize the ones that are ready to stick. He treats every statement like a spiritual investment. He speaks as if the thing he's talking about has already happened, already is. And that's the law of assumption and action. And the thing about this is, when you're that aligned with a sufficiently large vision, hard work just comes easy. You're naturally inspired to go out and do whatever it takes to win, because there's a huge difference between all of these people that are teaching hustle harder action, just do. It doesn't matter if you don't want to do it. The difference is that there's not energetics behind just showing up and taking action. Sometimes you can form a habit that makes it more likely that you're going to end up doing those actions on a regular basis. But it's actually easier to align your heart and mind with the thing that you need to do, with the outcome that you're trying to produce. And then you'll be naturally inspired to do that. If you're consistently doing an action that you don't want to do, ultimately you're going to get burned out. But with inspired action, you end up being able to tap into this infinite source of animation, and you can naturally move forward with near zero resistance. Now, does this always work perfectly? No, because the deeper truth around manifestation is that manifestation doesn't just happen in the mind alone. Yes, thought is creative. We are co-creators of our reality, but the real power is unlocked when thought and feeling are united, when the conscious and subconscious work together. In mystical terms, this is the union of Adam and Eve. Adam is the thinking mind, Eve is the heart or subconscious, the emotional body, our felt sense of reality. And when we deny Eve, we can fall into our own delusion because Eve is the deliverer of intuitive sensing that shows us where we need to grow and mature. Eve is the part of us who helps us course correct. Where Adam, when focused, yeah, Adam can run hard and fast. And with a big enough vision and enough public thought energy, Adam can win for a while. But it's Eve who transmutes vision into wisdom. And this is where all of us conscious creators looking to improve upon Trump's methods can take note. And also, maybe Trump is more connected to Eve than we give him credit for. You know, you can force your way through life with strong assumptions and rigid identity like Trump often does, and that will work to a point. But if you don't allow your heart to catch up, reality is going to mirror that back to you. You're going to start to notice resistance, opposition, chaos, not because the universe is against you, but because it's trying to lovingly integrate you into higher frequencies. Now, if you don't let the resistance around you bother you, if you can partition off the messages that you're getting from the subconscious, you can very effectively kick the can down the road seemingly forever. And that's the power of a strong mental constitution. But spiritual law is always working. And one of its main jobs is to reflect back the places in us that are out of alignment with love and humility. And that's not punishment. It's purification. Reality is always showing us what we need to feel and integrate. As consciousness researcher Tom Campbell would say, it's how reality reduces entropy in the larger consciousness system. So, what do we do with that information? Well, we can learn to create space to feel our big feelings in each moment and integrate those emotions that we're projecting onto the future. So what that looks like is we process our fears and doubts before the chaos has to manifest as reality. And reality is really, in this way, like an acupuncture needle. It's always poking us in the nervous system by triggering us emotionally in the exact place that we have stagnated energy that's ready to move again. Because oftentimes in our lives, maybe we didn't have the process or the observational space to actually feel what was happening in our lives. And so we bypass it in that moment. And when we bypass that, that gets lodged in our system as trauma. And so reality is designed to constantly be poking at all of that trauma that's lodged in our field, in our nervous system, and help get that energy moving again. And we can easily engage this process in meditation, in prayer, just by asking God to work on our hearts. And what God working on our hearts practically looks like is us feeling our feelings as sensation in our body and simply noticing how those bioenergetic sensations want to move. We become the observer of what's happening in our body. And in this way, we become soft and strong. We become clear and surrendered. We feel our grief, our fear, our doubt, and by feeling it, we transmute it into higher frequency creative potential that's more conducive to our highest vision. And that's what the mystics mean when they talk about dying daily. Norman Vincent Peale once said, the more you lose yourself in something bigger than yourself, the more energy you'll have. And I really think that that's why people like Trump have so much go, go, go power. And without any sign of, good diet or exercise on his part, he seemingly has an endless supply of energy. And that's because externals don't really matter once you've found alignment with a larger vision. And This is amplified with a kind of ease that is manifested in our lives, peace that is manifested even in the midst of chaos as our subconscious feeling part is integrated properly. And we do that just by feeling our big feelings, by taking moments of solace with ourselves. Neville Goddard took Peale's concepts even further. Goddard said that your imagination, your awareness is God. You may only be experiencing a tiny portion of that larger I am awareness, but your ability to perceive yourself is God working through you in co-creation. Through the mechanism of our awareness, our ability to observe each choice we make, our world is always mirroring who we've each accepted ourselves to be. And so this is a radical concept to those who have never really experimented with it. Wait, I can create my own reality? But proper experimentation will showcase the truth of this to anybody who approaches it earnestly. And if you want to learn more about this, check out my video on Neville Goddard and the Law of Assumption, because that's a deep dive into how this concept works and how you can explore your authorship over reality itself. But let's get back to Trump. Here's what we can learn from him. He's a master at mental projection. He rarely shows doubt in public. He commits to an outcome and assumes it boldly. But could he be even more effective if he allowed that outer strength to be balanced by more inner softness? When Adam, which is our conscious mind, marries with Eve, our subconscious, that's where we begin to move like water, flowing effortlessly. Yes, we can become so tight in our conscious assumptions that we literally bulldoze reality to our willpower. But life is always going to reflect back to us the shadow work we have to do by mirroring it back as resistance. And we can clearly see that playing out in Trump. You could argue that he needed to lose the 2020 election, that it was required for him to have such strong opposition, and that even the more heinous attempts on his life are actually catalyst from I am to produce even the slightest crack of humility and shadow integration. And if you listen to accounts from people who have actually met Trump, one that comes to mind is search out Bill Maher Trump dinner. That's a great example. But what you end up hearing these people say is that Trump is a different guy when you sit down with him one-on-one. He's not the same guy you see on TV. And so if you really look for it, you can see that all of the challenges Trump has run into have served a purpose. They've made him more aware and possibly even a little bit more humble in his quiet moments alone. And sure, maybe it's only small moments at a time, but ultimately, new territory was opened for Trump by having to integrate ever so slightly his shadow, which of course has been outpictured as reality, and that shows up for him as massive opposition and resistance. So this video isn't about judging Trump or guessing how he is in his private moments. God, life, the larger consciousness system is always handling that via the mechanism of in-the-moment karma or law of attraction. What this video is about is observing what's working for Trump and then evolving that as we learn how to be a conscious creator of reality. Because our leaders are always a reflection of us collectively. As we each evolve emotionally and spiritually, the people that we place in power begin to reflect that evolution back to us. And that creates an opening for a new kind of leader who is both strong and soft, both Adam and Eve. So let this be your invitation. Not to throw up resistance, not to blindly follow someone just because they're on your team. Resistance and unconscious action are never really viable long-term strategies. Instead, use your mind like Trump. Declare your vision boldly. Own your identity. But don't forget to feel your big feelings in moments of silence. Be someone who is growing in awareness of your own choices. Let your inner Eve rise up. Let the subconscious be flooded with love. Let your prayer be both declaration and surrender. This is the mystical way. This is the prayer that creates without resistance. If you enjoyed this video, check out my Mystical Bible series where we explore scripture verse by verse through the lens of Neville Goddard and the Law of Assumption. Neville believed that prayer was claiming your wish as already being fulfilled, not begging God, but aligning with him. click the playlist icon on the screen to start watching that series, or go to BibleMystic.com to get updates when a new video drops. And remember, claiming the assumption of your wish fulfilled is the ultimate prayer. This is how Trump prays. Let us know what life you're boldly declaring for yourself down in the comments. And finally, what do you think about the format of these videos? I'm recording them in my car when I'm having my morning coffee, so doing them as these short audio podcasts is really the easiest for me. But if you think these would be more effective with me on camera, let me know down in the comments and I'll see what kind of setup I can put together. Bye, y'all. We'll see you in the next one.